Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. We've got a review for you all for the latest book from the Star Wars adult novel line. This is for Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss, the highly anticipated new Mace Windu novel from Stephen Barnes, the Legends author, returning to canon for the first time to write something about Mace Windu. And this is technically the first Mace Windu centric novel we've had since Matthew Stover's Shatterpoint back in the original 2003 Clone Wars initiative. So this has been a long time coming. We're going to give you guys our spoiler free thoughts. So if you are looking to just hear if you should buy this book, check out this video. We're going to give you no spoilers. We're going to keep it spoiler free, focused on the writing, the plot a little bit, and of course the character of Mace Windu and the characters around the novel. Make sure you subscribe as well if you're interested in Star Wars book reviews. We cover every Star Wars book as it comes out, so make sure you check out the channel for all the book reviews we have done in the past and also the ones we have coming up. All right, let's get straight into it. And as always, we start out these videos discussing the writing, and of course, as we usually say in these videos, we got a review copy from Penguin Random House Audio, so we are listening to this via audio format. Sanak, I'm going to pass it to you. What you think of Stephen Barnes' writing, as well as the overall plot that's here in Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss?
I was pretty impressed by what Steve Barnes did here because, one, yes, he did write a Legends book. It was Successus Deception. But while people praise a lot of that writing, they don't necessarily praise a lot of the plot behind it. This is new. This is fresh. This is not set in that post Attack of the Clones during the Clone Wars era. This is set like mere days, if not maybe weeks after the Phantom Menace, and it wisely builds off what the start of the year was like with what is Qui-Gon gonna present to these Jedi, even in life and even in death here. And this is the even in death portion. This was a great setting for me because I was like, okay, this is not something I've really ever pieced together more than just reading on Wikipedia, like what it could have been like. And what Canon's definitely been doing is really broaching the topic of what these dynamics are like between Padawan apprentice, what's going on between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and how is that affecting the Jedi Order before things are set in motion with the films and everything. And Mace Windu, for all intents and purposes, because of the canon reset, has been kind of just defined by the Clone Wars '08 show, which, while still good, while he still has very memorable scenes there, has kind of shaped the perception of him being less of the Samuel L. Jackson guy who can say some cool things, is a little bit more cool and measured, especially in the Phantom Menace before he transforms into that stern figure. And it's kind of locked everyone's image of him, and like he is the dogmatic individual who can't see what he's doing to Anakin, what the Order's doing to Anakin, what's shaping Anakin into this easy puppet for Palpatine to orchestrate. And I think the great thing about this is that it builds off that Qui-Gon relationship that we've all been kind of teased about, and says, like, let's deal with Mace Windu as he is, as a person, what he's like, what his interests are, how he interacts on his own missions. And that was fun. That, I think that's what really sold me on that idea. And the world that's built out here, it's insane. Like the detail to take this world that is colloquially known as the Glass Abyss, that's all mostly underground because of solar radiation, has all these little crystals growing around, a lot of mycology, all these different organisms put into this kind of like wagon wheel structure. There was so much detail to this world that not only did we say, like, let's deal with Mace Windu as a person, as a character, but let's drop into like almost like a Dungeons and Dragons fully realized world where anything that he pulls and pushes, any action that he commits to one area can have a spontaneous effect and affect things going all around the planet. It worked for me because this feels a lot more like the Mace Windu that the Phantom Menace promised. The guy who is still Samuel L. Jackson. I think sometimes the plot in this does get a little convoluted because there's so much of a world here to really explore, but it's still so cool to consider like the concepts of the spider worms and how it really ties into a lot of the really cool thing that the story unfolded was his own connection to the Jedi Order. If he was always meant to be there, if he made the choice like he believed he did. But again, all that early setup with the details, all like building up this mystique of Mace Windu to all these people without revealing that he's a Jedi, following up on Qui-Gon's last wish and what Qui-Gon wants him to learn and change from that experience. It also resulted in a finale that, while action-packed like almost every Star Wars book, I felt connected to each character. I understood how the world's reacting.
Yeah, the way this book is plotted, I thought was really well done. What Stephen Barnes does here with Metagos is create a world, and we haven't seen that done very often in Star Wars canon. We don't see an emphasis on building up planets, building up cultures, trying to add new flavors, inject new sci-fi fantasy concepts, tie it back to old sci-fi fantasy concepts. This does have some Dune-isms in it. This is a book that has quite a bit of imagery that you don't necessarily see in Star Wars, and I think that works really well for this type of story. And so, if you're somebody who's tired of kind of the redundant nature of Star Wars canon being a lot of character-centric books that just give you lessons about the character, the plotting is very simple and straightforward. You know how you're going to get your three-act structure. You know, since you know where these characters end up, what's going to happen by the end, what needs to wrap up. I think Mace Windu and the Glass Abyss will surprise you in some ways. And I'm hoping that when we get hopefully more of this story, we add on and build up this time period, which is the absolute weakest period of Star Wars canon. And I think this does a great job of at least trying to come up with some ideas to propel certain characters forward. And so seeing some of the major characters, major players from Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones, where Mace Windu's role is elevated dramatically, seeing him have a journey that starts out and goes on this type of much more sci-fi style story, I thought was a really cool idea, and I think it's well written, well plotted. William Demerit, who does the audio for this, is really, really good. He's done one other Star Wars book, and it was Shadow of the Sith. There are certain characters and certain features, and we'll talk about them a little later, like the main villain Chulak, who I think is way better in the audio than you could possibly have reading. There are some great effects that are added to characters' voices. But overall, I like in a year that has the Phantom Menace being celebrated more than it probably has been since 1999, a year that's really hyping up the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon is once again the impetus for more stories coming out of that era. He is the standout character of that movie. And so seeing his fingerprints all over everything that the Jedi either learn before the movie or start to learn after, I think is a really cool touch. So I thought this book was quite well written. It's a good Audible experience as well if you're looking for that. And overall, I think if you're somebody who's really looking for something different, a different style Star Wars story, yes, it's about a character that you know survives and makes it to Attack of the Clones. But I think in a lot of ways, this is a very different experience that we don't see too often in Star Wars canon, much more akin to Star Wars Legends. And if you're looking for that type of story, I think you're going to find that here. Let's talk about the characters more specifically, starting with, of course, Mace Windu. Yeah, you already mentioned some things you thought about Mace Windu throughout the story, but give me some things that really stood out to you about the way Stephen Barnes portrayed this character, as well as some of the other standout characters that you really enjoyed from Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss.
Yeah, and I mean, when I say Mace Windu got to be himself, it's the fact that we got details like he liked Jarek, he commented on recipes, he got to be fun and playful. That I think that's what's always been missing about this character. When you bring in Samuel L. Jackson to play your Jedi, you kind of need to see some Samuel L. Jacksonism. This is his story. What would he be like on his own, interacting on his own? He's not just this incredible warrior for no reason. He has to have more than just the discipline and the training of years and years that other Jedi have. What makes him special? What makes him tick? He is almost a character that consistently likes that he is the odd one out. That almost kind of gives him comfort, especially at the start of the story, like the details that he's seeing, the way his quarters are like, and all that. I just liked detail being put around this character. But yeah, Night Shan, she was a great character. I think the way she unlocks Mace is probably one of the highlights of this book. And then also the whole concept of the Glass Abyss kind of being run by the character of Sybil and that really weird mother hive concept. And then with Chulak, the two beings put together, how they function, and which was really great in the audiobook as well. Having Mace kind of bounce back and forth, even the Maya droids. Yeah, I just think that Steve put some great characters around Mace Windu. The more he interacted with these characters, you got to see all the cool, fun sides about him. And yeah, just the detail of the world, like the vistas of the palace and how it's described hanging in this subterranean city with the mycology, the spider worms. These are sci-fi fantasy concepts that do not necessarily function in other Star Wars books. Again, the only thing is I hope that if anything, Steve Barnes gets to come and transition us into, unfortunately, who Mace Windu is by the time of Attack the Clones and through Clone Wars and through Revenge of the Sith, because he's a little too happy right now, and I still want to see why things have to unfortunately turn out that way.
Yeah, I found that the characters that inhabit the world of Metagos and make up all these different locales were really interesting and interesting enough to lead an ensemble that supports its main POV. And this is a Mace Windu book, so you're not going to be in for some, you know, hidden surprise about it actually being about some random other character, but Mace Windu gets you there. No, this is a Mace Windu book, and every other character definitely supports and enhances him. Really, the only other POV you get directly is the villain, and that is the character Chulak, who is a conjoined kind of two persons into one person thing. There's a new created species called Farakai, that is Chu, creates this power. And I thought there was a really interesting concept. I mean, again, back to the world of Metagos, the Glass Abyss, all the things that inhabit this planet and this world are very different. And I really like that we went so different. It's not just, we have so many books in Star Wars canon that are the Han book, the Poe book, you know, the Ray book, whatever it is, about each character doing something random that doesn't really impact the movies at all. And while this doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on the films as of now, I like that if you're not going to have an impact on the films, do it differently. Just show us some other side of Star Wars. And again, I thought the characters and the people that inhabit this world were so different than anything we've really seen in Star Wars canon. Much more like Star Wars Legends, which was far more willing to take risks and far more willing to tie into other sci fi concepts. So I did really appreciate that about this. We have a proxy esque droid and multiple droids in this. Maya 12 is a pretty good standout droid character. And I also really enjoyed the character of Kenshin. I thought Kenshin was a good foil for Mace, somebody who challenges him in a lot of ways. And their bond throughout the book, I thought, was quite interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about certain elements of their relationship as it progresses throughout the entire novel. And I think more work needs to be put in to really sell me on some of the things that Stephen Barnes wants to do with the character of Kenshin. But as of now, I'm interested in the start. And if we never get more, then I think that will hamper how I ultimately feel about this book come year, 2, 3 years from now. If we do get more, I think I'll enjoy this book even more for way they started a character like that. But I did appreciate the start of like the different cultures in here, not just the spider worms, but also you have the Sa'ad, which are an interesting group of farmers, and that's where Kenshin works, and it's this kind of tribal culture. There's just so many cool concepts here that really go back to the early days of sci-fi writing, when you're progressing from, you know, the 40s, 50s, more pulp side into a more serious take in the 60s. And ultimately, Mace Windu, I thought, was really strong here for the majority of this book. We have the version in the Phantom Menace who is more laid back. He is the least least serious out of any of the movies in the Phantom Menace. He is chilling on his chair. He's talking more directly, less aggressively. You know, in Tales of the Jedi, we see him far more stern, and that's pre-Phantom Menace, than we do really in the movie of the Phantom Menace. And then now we're getting a side to him that's a bit more jovial. I'm not sure if I agree fully with how jovial he can get in this book, but I think a Mace Windu who's on his own, who's willing to do whatever it takes to complete the mission, is in line with character. Now, like I said with Kenshin, there are some things that happen at the end of this book, some character things that I think are major leaps if we never get anything else. Even though this is right after Phantom Menace, so we still have 10 years to explore Mace Windu between this book and Attack the Clones, he's nowhere near the character he is at the end of this book. And I think something that would have changed him so dramatically, like we get not necessarily a full examination of who Mace Windu is and why he is like we do in Shatterpoint, but you get an examination of what led up to Mace Windu being this way. A lot of some of the things from his early foundational period as a Jedi that made him into who he is by the time of the Phantom Menace. Exploring that and then connecting it to some of the things at the end, I think works if there's more of a transition to the Attack of the Clones, because Attack of the Clones, he's far different. So if we never get that, again, it's another thing that might drop my overall feeling on this book a little bit. But if we do get that, it will continue to enhance a character that I already did like, because Shatterpoint's one of my favorite Star Wars books ever. This will continue to enhance another side of him from canon that I think could actually complement a lot of the things we've seen in other media. So fingers crossed to seeing more in the future. But we're going to wrap up our review here right now with our score out of 5. Sanak, what would you rate Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss out of 5?
For me, I would give this a very strong 3.5. Again, like we've been saying throughout this review, the caveat is there something more? Is there something that will transition Mace Windu, sadly as it may be, to the character that we see in Attack of the Clones? You know, that is what's gonna hold me back. I hope that this is a book that ages really well. It's a great book. I'm looking forward to more because I really do hope for more, especially with how this ends.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar place. I was going to give it a 3.5 as well, with again the caveat that this honestly could jump up to somewhere close to a 4 if we continue to push through this. Like a really great Mace Windu trilogy, which we very much so could have set up here. My biggest questions are I don't necessarily love a lot of the way the ending connects with what we know of Mace Windu from the films. And that's ultimately the problem, is that this is a book centered around the character of Mace Windu. If I'm worried about certain things about Mace Windu's canon lore, I think that still makes me very cautious. If it is perfectly connected in the future, which I very much so hope it is, I think you could have an all-time Mace Windu story here. So let us know what you guys think in the comments. Were you like us and read the ending and you were like, oh, I'm not sure how that necessarily connects to Mace Windu? Or did you read this and you're like, as a standalone piece of media, if I disconnect myself from the films, this is a great Mace Windu story. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. Make sure you like the video if you haven't subscribed for more book reviews just like this. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we will see you all next time.